As a producer and DJ during the early 2000s, sharing the decks with the likes of Steve Angelo and Axwell from the Swedish House Mafia, one of our big frustrations was that you would spend weeks creating these tracks with big atmospheric spatial sound staging effects, and the only time you'd ever get to hear it was on those Function 1 sound systems in those clubs and festivals. And in the 5 years I've been reviewing wireless earbuds, I never thought we would get to the point where you'd be able to experience that holographic big room staging on the go in a set of TWS. That is until I experienced the Geekfly Vitas, a 6-driver hybrid that sets a new standard when it comes to sound in a TWS. As with all of my reviews, you're going to hear some cool samples in real life scenarios later, although I'll warn you now, it certainly wasn't the priority with this release. And whilst the Vitas doesn't have ANC, you are still going to hear a sample of its passive noise isolation compared with the OnePlus Buds for active noise cancellation on a noisy subway and in a busy coffee shop, so you can judge for yourself whether it's a compromise you're willing to make. We've also got the usual binaural sound sample, so you'll get to hear the Vitas in all their glory, but really it isn't going to convey truly how fantastic the driver performance and coherency is. So first we're going to deep dive into that driver technology and take a look at some of the measurements. The Vitas has an 8mm dynamic driver handling the lower frequencies and mid-range, along with an 8mm planar. Moving up the frequency spectrum, you've got 2 balanced armatures and 2 bone conduction piezoelectric drivers. Its built-in amplifier and Qualcomm QCC3091 chipset that's capable of 24-bit 96K throughput finishes off an impressive audio hardware lineup. Now, you've seen and heard many times on this channel that chucking in a bunch of different drivers doesn't necessarily equate to an enjoyable audio experience. But with Vitas, the whole is even better than the sum of its parts, something that definitely doesn't happen by accident. It relies on phase, timing and tuning to all be working in harmony, and that really is the Vitas' secret weapon. We can actually see some of this coherency in the measurements, including the group delay, looking beyond the smooth rise that you get from 20 to 80 Hz, which is predictable with any vented dynamic driver. It's pretty much slide rule between 100 Hz and 10 kHz, hovering within roughly 0.2 milliseconds, essentially instantaneous for the human ear. The left and right channels mirror each other almost perfectly, which means stereo imaging remains phase true, i.e. sounds placed in the mix actually stay where they're meant to be. A harmonic distortion on the Vitas is also exceptionally low. We're talking comfortably under 0.3% once you pass the sub bass, and it's dominated by the second harmonic. That's the good kind of distortion, the one that our ears interpret as warmth and fullness, not grit or glare. Each driver is working in its linear comfort zone. Crossovers are properly managed and the DSP isn't fighting the hardware, it's simply letting those well-behaved transducers do their job. Even in some of the dual driver TWS setups that I've reviewed in the past, that mismatch in terms of timing between the drivers is very evident. The sluggish DD compared to the snappy MEMS on the Creative Orvana Ace 2 is a prime example. And the Vitas conquers this problem with 6 drivers to contend with shows a real depth of understanding of the drivers, their placement and their strengths and limitations by Geekfly, something that doesn't happen by accident. It comes with years of audio engineering expertise. In real terms, what that means to the listener is the instruments are exactly where they're meant to be when they're meant to be. It means that all tracks of all genres sound lifelike, but particularly music that tries to flex that spatial arrangement, like my own productions, like I talked about in the intro. But the best mainstream example is Madonna's Immaculate Collection, an album that was recorded using Q Sound. The technology was popular during the 80s and it was intended to give you that kind of holographic effect with the right equipment. I've never heard this effect really replicated well on any set of TWS, but listening to Vogue on the Vitas was just a sensory overload. I mean, you've got Madonna's voice coming from kind of behind you, massively widening the sound field. You've got your percussion clicking in and it's got a real shimmer and sparkle. Synths and snares come from all over the place. I mean, he's really quite incredible. And it makes it very difficult to go back to some of those budget buds where you are getting a good sound delivery, but you're not getting anything like that vertical sound field that really brings music to life and adds that emotive attachment that you get when you're listening to something that you really truly enjoy. It isn't just the soundstage width that stands out though, it's the depth too, and the layering that's even present in those lower frequencies. Male vocals are weighty and impactful, whilst female vocals are crystalline. If you love music with lots of percussive elements like I do, then you'll be absolutely in your element, because you'll hear every shimmer and every sparkle. Now what's even more fascinating is if I'd seen this frequency response before I listened to the Vitas, I probably would have been put off. That massive hump in the mid bass and steep descent to around 750 Hz usually means bloated bass that will drown the mids. And that's definitely true of the likes of the Earphone Air Pro 3 and Creative Orvana Ace 2 even to a degree, that have got that similar slope, which is the signature of a driver losing control. The energy lingers, overlaps, and then muddies everything above it. But with the Vitas, the counterexample is true, and it's why I underlined the importance of timing in that earlier part of the review. Instead of the bass hanging around, it decays naturally. So what you get isn't bloat, it's body with discipline, it's deep and it's tactile and textured, but stopping exactly when it should. You can actually hear the engineering decisions from the way the planar driver's immediacy plays off the dynamic driver's weight, the way the bone conduction layer breathes space into vocals instead of pushing them forward. Everything feels proportioned, confident and deliberate. It's that what brings out the emotion that the artists intended, and it's what makes the Vitas a truly special set of TWS. From a curiosity perspective, here's where the Vitas would sit in the league table. Not only are they comfortably at the top, but the delta between them and the next best placed bud, the Huawei FreeBuds Pro 4, is significant. Now I know it's slightly unfair to compare the Vitas against these jack of all trades, master of none buds that prioritise convenience over sound. Quite a few of you have asked me to do a comparison between the Vitas, the Rex 5 and Aviat ZX1, so that's coming up in a future review, and I think there will definitely be a fairer comparison than the one that you can see here. As promised, here's that binaural sample of the Vitas. Just bear in mind that there's no bones in the simulated ear, so you're not going to get the true resonance of those bone conduction drivers. It should still at least give you an idea to the sound signature. As you heard, the sound signature is thick, it's meaty, it's full of character, and it has the right level of note weight, especially for male vocals. The mids are very organic and very naturally presented, and there's lots of shimmer and sparkle to treble. You might want to use a more narrow bore ear tip in order to tame a tiny little bit of sibilance if we're being really ultra critical, but otherwise it's a sound signature, as I said, that is really full of character and complements the driver arrangement perfectly. Geekfly have an app, at least on Android, and there's one for iOS on the way, and it gives you a custom EQ and a bunch of very usable presets, although you need audio playing to be able to select them. I think the only preset that doesn't really add anything is speech, I guess, unless you're listening to podcasts and you want to trim all of the bass out. Meanwhile, the custom EQ, whilst only 5 channels, does give you a massive plus or minus 12 dB to make those adjustments. But personally, I love the sound as is. The app's pretty limited otherwise, with the only other feature being the ability to customize the touch controls. As always with any IEM or TWS, To get the most out of the sound, you absolutely have to get the fit right. The Vitas has a standardized nozzle size and a medium fit. They are a bit on the bulky side. I mean, you've got to put those 6 drivers somewhere, but even on my problematic left ear, which is a little bit shallower than the right, I still managed to get a decent seal and a decent fit. Geekfly included quite a few different size and style ear tips in the box, this liquid silicone one being probably the best fit for me. If you want for aesthetics, the Vitas's blue and gold shimmery faceplates certainly appeal. They're well built as well, but are definitely outdone by their charge case, which would almost certainly survive nuclear Armageddon, but is not the most portable. Geekfly included a protective case, which is more to protect you in case it drops on your leg or something like that, softening the blow. The Vitas are surprisingly efficient when it comes to battery life, considering all those drivers. I topped out at around 6 hours 15, with volume typically around 60% because these are pretty loud. I measured latency at 227 milliseconds and there's no gaming mode, so unfortunately, despite that amazing spatial performance, they're not going to be useful for gaming.
The lack of versatility of the Vita sometimes a roost if you're looking to use them for something like calls, where, as you can probably hear, the mic is pretty much incoherent.
Look, if you use the Vitas to make a call outdoors, where you've got a mixture of lots of wind noise, the sound of lots of different vehicles going by, perhaps you're using them on the daily commute, something like that. This is what you can expect. I'm not expecting too much, but at least it gives you an indication how they're going to perform on those calls.
I mentioned in the intro that the Vitas don't have active noise cancellation, and for some, that is going to be an absolute deal breaker off the bat. But for me, I found that a lot of the time, I didn't really notice it. Here's a couple of samples in everyday use where you can hear the difference between the passive noise isolation of the Vitas and the active noise cancellation of one of the better performing mid-tier budget buds, the OnePlus Buds 4. So as you heard there is certainly a difference, obviously, but perhaps it's not as huge a difference as you might have initially thought. The passive noise isolation won't be enough to drown out cabin noise on a plane though, so that's something that's worth bearing in mind. It's also fair to say that the Vitas perform best where you've got minimal environmental sound around you, and you can benefit more from the tactility of those piezoelectric drivers. Even so, hopefully that gave you food for thought as to whether this is absolute deal breaker or not. There are a bunch of other things that the Vitas doesn't have as well, like in-ear wear detection sensors, wireless charging and multi-point connectivity. And some of you are going to be watching this video thinking, why the hell does ReganCipher like these so much when they lack all of these features that I'm looking for? If that sounds like you, that's okay, because I don't think Geekfly were targeting this release at you. This is a product for users of high-end IEMs that want the convenience of wireless but don't want to compromise on sound. If that sounds like you and you're not frightened off by the budget, then these are an absolute must buy. With 11.11 round the corner, it could be the best opportunity for you to get a deal on these. Do check back the description for purchase links. Next time around, we've got a comparison of all the pluses: Earphones Air Pro 4 Plus, Soundpeats Air 5 Pro Plus, and the OnePlus Buds 4. Thanks a lot for watching. Don't forget to like the video if you enjoyed it or found it useful, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. For now, it's ReganCipher signing off.